October 1603. The cold wind swept across the Bosphorus. A small boat approached the dark silhouette of Topkapi Palace. Inside that boat sat a girl of barely 15, her wrists trembling, her eyes wide, her future unknowable. Her name was Anastasia. But history would remember her as Kösem Sultan, the woman who would one day rule an empire through the shadows of fear, devotion, and ruthless ambition. She entered the palace as a slave, silent, alone, disoriented by the scent of incense and rosewater drifting through the marble halls. The whispers of eunuchs, the distant echo of palace doors closing behind her. Everything felt like a warning. She didn't know that men with crowns would kneel before her one day. She didn't know that her sons would inherit an empire shaped by her hand. She only knew one thing: there was no way back. And yet, there was something unusual about her. A calmness, a stillness that frightened the women of the harem more than her beauty. She watched everything, memorized faces, studied the way power moved in silence. Even then, power sensed her. When Sultan Ahmed I first saw her, the torches flickered as if the palace itself inhaled. He was young, too young for the weight of a collapsing empire, and he carried loneliness the way soldiers carried swords. But when he looked at her, something shifted. She didn't bow like the others. She didn't tremble. She simply held his gaze as if she already knew she would change his life. And that was the moment her destiny began. In the golden chambers of Topkapi, she didn't rise with beauty alone. She rose with intelligence, the kind that made older, wiser women nervous. She listened before speaking. She understood what the Sultan needed before he said a word. The empire was bleeding, the janissaries restless, the court corrupted. Ahmed needed calm. He needed someone who wasn't afraid of him, or for him, and she became that anchor. But behind that gentle presence was something sharper, a mind that refused to be powerless ever again. As the nights passed, their connection deepened into something confusing and dangerous. She became his confidant, his escape, his quiet support in a world that wanted to see him fall. But every moment she spent at his side amplified the growing hatred within the harem. The valid Sultan, Ahmed's powerful mother, watched her with cold suspicion. The chief consorts whispered about her origins. Some said she carried secrets from another land, others said she cast spells over him. But the truth was simpler. She understood ambition better than any of them. One night, while snow gathered on the palace roofs, she heard her first true warning. A eunuch whispered to her as he adjusted her cloak, "Sultana, the higher you rise, the deeper the shadows become." She didn't answer, but she understood. Power wasn't a crown, it was a battlefield. Then the first turning point arrived, the birth of her sons. Prince Murad first, then Ibrahim. Each child pulled her deeper into the empire's veins. Now her ambition had a heartbeat, her power had a future. Her love for Ahmed was real, but her loyalty to her sons, that was something else entirely. It was fierce, protective, and dangerously blinding. The palace watched her transform from a quiet girl into a force, a mother preparing for war long before the war arrived. But power never rises without an enemy, and in Topkapi, enemies grow like vines. The janissaries whispered that she influenced state matters. Ministers accused her of manipulating the Sultan. Even some of Ahmed's brothers feared her children would end their bloodlines. She could feel the tension tightening around the palace, like a rope waiting to snap. Some nights, she held her sleeping sons and wondered which shadow in the room was plotting against them. And yet, she smiled. She walked calmly. She pretended not to know that poison was being discussed, that alliances were shifting, that the empire had begun to revolve around her. Then came the tragedy that changed everything. Sultan Ahmed fell ill, the palace froze, the empire trembled, and Kösem's world darkened. In those days of fever and silence, she saw the truth of power more clearly than ever. Without Ahmed, she was nothing. Without her sons on the throne, she was vulnerable, a target. She felt fear claw at her chest, but behind that fear rose a cold determination. She would protect her children at any cost, even if it meant destroying others. Ahmed died too young, too suddenly, and as the empire mourned, the harem erupted into chaos. The question of succession became a storm ready to tear everything apart. Many wanted Mustafa, Ahmed's unstable brother, on the throne. Others argued for Osman, Ahmed's eldest son with another consort. Every choice threatened her children's future. Kösem hid her grief, wiped her tears, and stepped into the war. She smiled at her rivals. She comforted the weeping consorts. She whispered loyalty into the ears of ministers while tightening her grip on the harem. But in her heart, she was already calculating. If she played even one moment wrong, Murad could die before he ever touched a crown. In the end, her enemies won the first battle. Osman II, not her son, became sultan. And for the first time, Kösem tasted helplessness. Osman distrusted her. He resented her influence. He feared her intelligence, and behind those fears grew something darker, the desire to isolate her sons, weaken her position, and secure the line of succession away from her children. She was watched, restricted, pushed into quiet corridors while he reshaped the palace. But Kösem was not a woman who surrendered. From the shadows, she built alliances, eunuchs, ministers, even members of the Janissaries who despised Osman's reforms. She listened, planned, and waited, like a mother wolf watching the hunter who threatened her cubs. Then the empire reached its breaking point. Osman II was overthrown, the first Ottoman Sultan ever deposed by his own soldiers. The palace shook with screams, steel, and betrayal. And Kösem, standing behind the lattice screens, watched history rewrite itself in blood. In the aftermath, in that eerie calm after the storm, one truth became clear: a vacuum of power had formed, and she was brave enough to step inside it. Mustafa, the unstable brother, took the throne briefly, but everyone knew he couldn't last. The empire needed strength, direction, someone with a steady hand, and she had one goal left: Murad, her son. When Murad IV finally ascended the throne as a child, the court celebrated, but Kösem, she understood exactly what this moment meant. She was now the valid sultan, the most powerful woman in the empire, but also the most targeted. As she stepped onto the red carpet toward the throne room, the air felt colder. The palace walls seemed to whisper warnings. She wasn't just a mother anymore. She was a ruler, a strategist, a guardian of an empire that never forgave weakness. And yet, as the doors opened and she saw young Murad sitting on that massive throne, his feet unable to touch the floor, she felt something break inside her. Love, fear, destiny, all tangled into a single, unbearable truth. Everything she had fought for had finally arrived. But the secret she carried, the one she never dared to speak aloud, would one day destroy everything she built, and that shadow was already moving.